The 1990s gave us frosted tips, cargo pants, and two of the biggest boy bands in history. The Backstreet Boys and NSYNC dominated the charts, sold millions of records, and had teenage girls screaming around the world. But what if I told you the man behind these superstars was secretly stealing their money while running one of the biggest scams in American history? And the question nobody was asking back then was, how can the biggest bands in the world be making less than minimum wage? And why would their own manager sue them for $150 million when they tried to leave? Look, if you think the music industry is corrupt now, wait until you hear what happened in the 90s. Absolutely hit and break that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you thought you knew about your childhood heroes. Before Lou Pearlman became the king of boy bands, he was obsessed with blimps. That's right, blimps. Growing up in Queens, he'd watch them take off from the airport across from his house. By the late 70s, he was running his own blimp business, leasing them to companies for advertising. But Pearlman had a problem. He kept signing contracts for blimps he didn't actually own. Sound familiar? It should, because this was just the beginning of his pattern of selling things that didn't exist. The blimp business crashed and burned, literally. His blimps kept crashing, lawsuits piled up, and by 1991, his company Airship International was done. But Pearlman had learned something valuable. He was really good at convincing people to give him money. That's when he looked at the music industry and saw new kids on the block making millions. He thought to himself, I can do that. And you know what? He was absolutely right. In 1993, Pearlman dropped $3 million on a nationwide talent search. He was looking for 5 guys who could sing, dance, and look good doing it. What he found were 5 nobodies from Orlando who would become the Backstreet Boys. Pearlman created Transcontinental Records with one simple goal: manufacture the next new kids on the block. He hired the same managers, used the same formula, and it worked like magic. The Backstreet Boys exploded onto the scene and became a cultural phenomenon. 2 years later, he did it again with NSYNC. 5 more unknowns, including a curly-haired kid named Justin Timberlake, were turned into superstars almost overnight. But things got interesting. While these bands were selling millions of records and touring the world, Pearlman had something built into their contracts that nobody was paying attention to. Something that would make him richer than any of the actual band members. You wanna know how greedy Lou Pearlman was? He literally wrote himself into the contracts as the 6th member of both bands. Not as a manager, not as a producer, but as an actual band member entitled to 1/6 of all profits. Think about that for a second. Pearlman legally made himself the 6th member of their group, allowing him to rake in 1/6 of the band's profits, on top of taking in management fees. But it gets worse. Way worse. The Backstreet Boys claim that they had only received $300,000 since 1993, while Pearlman had made $10 million, according to their 1998 lawsuit. These guys were the biggest band in the world, selling over 130 million records worldwide, and they were basically making nothing. NSYNC got it even worse. After 2 years of non-stop touring and recording, selling millions of albums, they got their first real paycheck, $10,000 each. That's less than minimum wage for 2 years of their work, while their albums were topping charts around the globe. Was Lou Pearlman a music mogul or just a really successful con artist who happened to pick talented kids? By the late 90s, both bands had figured out that they were getting screwed. NSYNC sued Pearlman and his record company Transcontinental for defrauding the group of more than 50% of their earnings, rather than his promise of only receiving 1/6 of the profits. The Backstreet Boys sued him too. The band was hit with a $150 million breach of contract lawsuit in an effort to stop the move and to stop them from performing or recording using the name NSYNC. Wait, let me get this straight. The band sued their manager for stealing their money, so he sued them back for $150 million? Takes some serious nerve. But Pearlman wasn't done. He had other bands under his control: O-Town, LFO, Take 5, and several girl groups. With the exception of US5 and Marshall Dillon, many of the musical acts that worked under Pearlman sued him in federal court for misrepresentation and fraud. Every single one of them had the same story: massive success, tiny paychecks, and contracts designed to make Pearlman rich while keeping the actual performers broke. While Pearlman was busy ripping off his fans, he was running an even bigger scam behind the scenes. The success of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC gave him incredible credibility with investors. He would walk into meetings, point to the charts where his bands dominated the top spots, and tell potential investors that they can get in on the next big thing by investing in transcontinental records. But this wasn't just about music anymore. Pearlman had created an entire fictional business empire. He told investors about transcontinental airlines, transcontinental travel, and dozens of other companies that only existed on fake letterhead and fraudulent financial documents. In 2006, Pearlman was sued by the state of Florida and eventually found guilty of defrauding more than 2,000 investors out of more than $317 million over the course of 15 years. Here's how the scam worked. Pearlman would show potential investors the success of his bands and promise huge returns. He created fake companies, fake financial documents, and even fake accounting firms to convince people that his business was legitimate. The truth? The notorious manager of NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys lured investors with a brand that encompassed an airline, record label, talent and travel agencies, and more. Most of these companies didn't actually exist. He used new investor money to pay old investors, keeping the scheme going for over 20 years. It was classic Ponzi scheme 101, just with a boy band twist. The genius part was using his famous musicians as unwitting marketing tools. Every time the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC appeared on TV, performed at an award show, or had their faces on a magazine cover, they were essentially advertising Pearlman's scam to potential investors. Investors would see these megastars and think, if this guy can make nobodies into global superstars, imagine what he can do with my retirement money. They had no idea that the very bands that they were using as proof of Pearlman's success were being robbed blind by the same man asking for their investments. When the FBI came knocking in 2006, Pearlman was already gone. He'd fled to Germany, then to Indonesia, staying one step ahead of federal agents. The guy who had spent decades living in luxury mansions and flying private jets was now hiding in cheap hotels, constantly looking over his shoulder. But running a Ponzi scheme while managing boy bands has made Pearlman famous. Too famous. A German tourist spotted him at a hotel in Indonesia after seeing his picture in the newspaper. The FBI tracked him down and arrested him at the hotel bar, eating breakfast like nothing had happened. The irony? He was down to his last $10,000 when they caught him, the same amount he once paid NSYNC members for 2 years of work. The band's legal battles went on for years. Both NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys eventually had to pay him a settlement just to get out of their contracts, with the cost for the Backstreet Boys reportedly in the tens of millions. It was a final, painful betrayal. In 2007, Pearlman was indicted and later sentenced to 25 years for conspiracy, money laundering, and making false statements during a bankruptcy proceeding. He died from cardiac arrest at the age of 62 in 2016. To this day, more than $400 million from his Ponzi scheme is still missing. Lou Pearlman created two of the most successful boy bands in history, then systematically betrayed them for decades. He stole from his artists, lied to investors, and ran one of the largest Ponzi schemes in American history. The bands he created went on to sell over 100 million records combined. The Backstreet Boys are still touring today. Justin Timberlake became one of the biggest stars in the world, but they did it despite their manager, not because of him. But what's your take on this? Should we remember Pearlman as a music power who discovered incredible talent, or a con artist who stole millions from the very people that made him rich? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The music industry always has a dark side, and Lou Pearlman's story proves that sometimes the people promising to make your dreams come true are the ones you should trust the least. Now, like the video and consider subscribing to the channel too. Speaking of dreams coming true against all odds, check out our last video about one song that saved Whitney Houston's career and silenced her haters. It's a story about talent triumphing over adversity, and I'm sure that will give you chills.